Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vocational podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, just in your head. And if you're a new listener, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for being one of the bays, one of the girls. Okay. So today on the podcast, I have a personal friend of mine, a professional in her own right, a creative in her own right, a published author in the field of psychology, a certified HR specialist, an intentional professional who has been and has shown her passion for inclusivity by advocating, facilitating, and strategizing in the field of psychology and human resources with over 3 years of experience in the field. Emanuela Oku, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Well, it's a very
Pleasure.
great intro.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. You deserve to be here, and I'm so glad that you're taking out the time out of a very restful day to speak with me, honestly, because we just came out of a public holiday, so everybody is still in refresh reset mood.
hmm
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very fun. But how's your week looking so far? It's like today is Tuesday, but this is the most Monday Tuesday I've ever had in a really
hmm
long time.
To
This
me
is like
also.
first day of the week. So how is that going so far?
It's been okay, I guess. I hate and I also love short weeks because you get the extra weekend, but then all of the work gets cramped into one. So
Exactly.
I just had to block off my calendar today to really focus on something that I'm trying to roll out in October for my workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. It's literally it's a whole week of activities around diversity and inclusion. So I just really just blocked my day. I'm like, I really need to focus on this and
To work.
nobody disturb
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was that kind
Yeah.
of day.
Oh, I wish my day started out with them switching my system. So we have one so I got a new laptop at work because IT said the one I had already was expiring, whatever that means. Because me, I've had laptops for 15 years, 20 years. They did not expire, they didn't pack up. But
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
know how to do corporate IT, so I'm not questioning them. Sha, it took 2 hours before they were able to get it up and running because I have this thing in my eyes where I can't look at bright screens, so all of my devices are on night mode all the time. They're always very, very yellow. So the night mode on this laptop just was not working. Like I was even trying to adjust the brightness, it wasn't working. So that's what they spent most of my day trying to fix. So I could barely get anything done. So I just know that you see that usual cramming of things into the 4 days for a short week. I'm cramming mine into three. Yeah.
I'm
So
screaming for you.
so ask me how I am at the end of the week if I'm still alive to tell you the story.
I'm sure you'll be. I'm
It's
very, very
between me
sure.
and the Lord, honestly. It's between me and the Lord. But let's get right into the quick fire questions. I know you're a big reader. Emma loves books almost. You know what? As much as I do, if not more, in earnest. So, what is your most recent read?
Oh, now I'm trying to think of which one I want to share because to the most recent read I'm going through right now. It's this book called The Power of Your Dreams. So it's kind of like a religious book actually. It's
Okay.
by Pastor Stephanie Ike Okafor,
Okay.
and she really just delves into just how God speaks to you in your dreams. So it's a religious book. It's a bit of a shift. It's my
Mm-hmm.
first ever one, and I absolutely love
Ooh.
Stephanie. Yeah, it's my
Ooh.
first I guess it's kind of my first Christian novel, kind of. That's not like a devotional or like a
Okay.
motivational book. So it's interesting so far. Yeah.
So is it like a guidebook kind of? There's some books that um you read them and they're meant to be like advice to you, and then there's some books that are supposed to be like a hands-on practical, like it tells you, okay, go do this, then go do this, that, like basically with steps. So what kind of book is it?
To It's kind of one of those books that really guide you. It talks about just dreams, how God can speak to you in your dreams, how like some people are seers, knowers. It really dives into the theology of like just Christianity and how God speaks and how different
Okay.
people feel God's presence and things like that. Then she has some reflection questions at the end of the chapters. It's been pretty interesting. It's a very personal read for me, so I guess I'm excited to share that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. For sharing that. Like I personally, I don't think I've ever like read any of those kinds of books that at least have like reflections at the ends of each chapter. So like that's a pretty rare find, honestly. Usually maybe it's going to have like some kind of activity like at the end to like maybe just, I don't know, evaluate what you have learned from it. But like there's no real like meditative, sit down and absorb what you've, understood. So that's very, very cool. On to the next question. What is something that's surprising that's on your bucket list
Oh, something
that you think would be a
surprising.
surprise to other people? No, that you think would be a surprise to the people who know you.
Oh, girl.
Okay, okay, okay,
um,
okay. To people who don't know you.
I don't know actually. What is on my bucket list? That's a very good question. I feel like, in all transparency, I have not written a bucket list.
Okay.
I don't know what's would be the most surprising thing if I were to write one, to be honest. Like I have a couple of ideas of things like I want to do and accomplish, but like I haven't now you're going to make me go back and write this down.
You should, you should. Okay, maybe might I suggest that it doesn't have to be like a bucket list. It could be a try before, I don't know, try before I move to a new place list, or try before maybe I don't know, try before I grow my hair longer or I cut my hair, or something like that. So that may be something to include in a bucket list if you ever would have one. But like, do you have any fun ideas coming to you right now at the moment for a bucket list?
A
Just
lot.
one
That's
idea,
okay, shoot. Okay. Now I have to pick. So
just one
I
that you know for a
definitely
fact must be there.
I must have in my life. I want a room full of succulent plants. I feel like you already know this. And
Absolutely.
that's top of my list is like I don't know why I find them so adorable.
So like a whole room full of succulents, like dedicated to succulents.
Ideally, yes. Will I be able to take care of all of them? Maybe not. Cause like yeah, eventually hopefully like an Ella's garden or something. Something. But I
Ooh, that
know.
does sound cute. It's like Ella succulents.
Exactly. Exactly. That's, I guess,
Okay.
one of my top bucket list things because I'm weirdly
Uh,
obsessed with succulents and I can't explain
yes.
it.
Yes, you are. And like they see you, like it's such a what I've come to realize, like with you gathering succulents throughout the years, it's such a like labor of love, painstaking process. Cause like the way you go about, getting your plants, it isn't just like, go to a grocery store and then like pack 100. You actively search out the specific ones you like and you want, be it on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, all these specialized places. So
Yes.
it seems like a very long term, gathering process. So do you think that applies to your professional life as well? Like, do you prefer long term projects to shorter term projects?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I would say in my role, it really depends on the impact. I if it's something that is going to be very impactful and it's something like, say, for an example, you wanted to put out like an apprenticeship program, say for Indigenous youth, for an example, that isn't really something that you can do in 1 month or 2 months. It's something that's going to take a long process.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then I also, oh, that's a very important, very good question. In the area, yeah, with the work that I do, like, it's all rewarding in a way, but I naturally kind of like, I would say I like short-term projects, but this is a hard question, girl. Sorry, this is a
Explain
hard
both
one.
stances. If you like, okay, so is it a situation where like the fulfillment, or rather like the results from short term projects is like quicker, and like you can get to actually see the change that you've made quicker compared to like longer term projects? Is that it?
Well, yes, but the I guess I would say like the issue though within the world that I deal with is like it's not really easy to get sometimes quick wins because when you're working towards things like organizational change and thinking of things like getting people to be more inclusive and learn about inclusion, enhance
Mm-hmm.
engagement rates around things like this, it's more long term as
Mm-hmm.
a an entire field because it has to be measurable over a certain amount of time to see how much progress people have made, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to keep retraining and retraining. But what I really do find rewarding is like the short term projects. Say, for an example, like I have lots of learning sessions and education sessions. The outcome of those are what I really like. It's typically more short term, where it's like an education session. We talk about it, we workshop a specific topic, it could be intercultural communication, whatever it is. And then the feedback
Mm-hmm.
that comes out of that, because it's more short term. And then the feedback that comes from it, it's rewarding to kind of get people to be like, oh, I get it now, or that made
Oh,
total sense. Did you get what I mean? I can't
yes.
really, both are valuable, so it's really hard to say this is what I prefer over
This is
this.
like the favorite one. Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. 100% understood. And like, I feel like that definitely applies to my line of work as well. And where like sometimes short term projects can feel a bit rushed to me as well. So it's 100% like, it is a lot more nuanced than just like the duration.
Okay,
So you've already touched on some of like some parts of your job, like
go
while
again.
answering that question. So please, could you, in your own words, explain to us what it is you do for you know, as your day job for a
It's my
living?
day job.
Mm-hmm.
So as my day job, I essentially create the diversity, equity, and inclusion program for the organization that I work at right now. It's a big task. And the reason why I say so is because Canada, I work in Canada, and Canada is such a multicultural environment. So we have
Absolutely.
people from many different walks of lives, and we now have a very multi-generational workforce as well. So there's a lot
Absolutely.
that comes with that. There's a lot of nuance that already exists within the workplace. So I guess my day to day isn't necessarily always the same, but the structure of the program itself is typically kind of like follows a structure. So I always break it down this way. It's 50% kind of like education, making sure people understand what inclusive practices are, how to be
Mm-hmm.
inclusive, and then 50% process improvements in terms of like making sure that the processes and the things that we are say using for like hiring, for an example, when we're doing things like succession planning, when
Mm-hmm.
we're what essentially whatever organizational life cycle is around that employee life cycle, from when we attract people, we recruit them, and we're onboarding, what are we telling them, how are we telling them, so making sure that that entire process is inclusive. So
Okay.
it includes everything from, so we have a strategic action plan that
Mm-hmm.
was developed. So then we went into creating like a company's DE&I policy. So kind of like what is our anti-discrimination policy, what's our standpoint on that, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then it goes into like because I'm in under human resources, and so the human resources department is essentially what I like to say runs the business in a way, in terms of like
Absolutely.
do the hiring, the attraction, the onboarding, the retention of people when people are transitioning into different
Mm-hmm.
new roles and everything. So, big
Mm-hmm.
focus of my work is ensuring that that entire process that HR is involved in is as inclusive as possible. And of course, HR interfaces with management, with different managers when you're hiring, when you're doing promotions, when you're doing performance reviews. So also making sure that they're tuned on how to do that from an inclusive perspective, and also thinking about how to position that for leaders and also leaders themselves. How do you do this from an inclusive perspective? So that's the bulk of what I do. And then again, lots and lots of education. So of course it's like it's multifaceted, so it's many different things that I get to have the privilege actually to talk about in the workplace and to bring front and center for people. Because I guess some examples are like for National Accessibility Week this year, we kind of try to debunk some myths around accessibility, talk about
Oh,
why we
can
need
you give me an
accessibility.
example?
So one of the biggest myths that we hear from the workplace is that people who have or have a lived experience with the disabilities, that they feel they would be stigmatized because if they, for an example, said, "Oh, I have a disability, I need an accommodation, I need extra help, I need extra time." So people naturally see asking for help in the workplace as a taboo thing, as a negative
Yeah.
thing. So we're trying to walk back from that. It is essentially a human right to ask and need and have make sure have an accommodation in general. But what we find is that what people feel is the complete opposite. So it's like, how do you get people to understand that this is human rights? It's not a thing and it's not going to be used against you. But what we need to make sure is because all of the systems, when you really think about it in the world, is made for able bodied people.
It
And
is. It is.
you naturally don't have to think about if I'm going out, oh, is this place going to be wheelchair accessible? Or
Yeah.
am I going to have like tactile sensors? Or am I going to be
Yeah.
able to
Is there going to be
navigate?
braille in the elevator? Stuff like
Exactly. Do you get
for the
what I
blind.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So when people don't really like feel comfortable talking about this, then we're not really able to really understand their own personal struggles and what we need to improve and advance. So that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of what the conversation was around. And there's legislation. So the Canadian government has the Accessible Canada Act, Ontario has the Accessibility of Ontario Disability Acts, the AODA, it's the
Yeah.
English acronym. So there's a lot of like legislation around things like this. So it's also really just highlighting that there is legislation. This is your human rights. We're not going to get discriminated against. And we also, biggest part of accessibility is the attitudes. So a lot of times when, especially when we get into the topic of like neurodiversity, people are like, "Oh, it's not real. It's rubbish. It's bullshit. It's what people say because they don't want to do work."
Yeah.
So the the attitudes essentially around things like this are what my role and my team at my organization really try to change and try to influence and really get people to understand that it's all part of the human life and human experience.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's like so interesting and like so necessary. And yet, weirdly, it is very niche. Like, that's
Yeah.
what really, really baffles me about, work, the work that you do. People like would listen to what your role entails, and you like innately you would understand that this is a necessary role, but yet it's very niche and we do not have enough people speaking about these topics, being interested in these roles. So my question to you is, how did you discover this role? Is it something that, like, while you were studying psychology, you already knew that, okay, this is how I want to apply my degree in psychology? Or is it something you stumbled upon? Or is it something that, like, you had to research and like go out of your way to find?
That's a very great question, to be honest. So, my journey was a bit interesting when, so with my undergrad was in psychology and human resources, and I really, really so badly wanted to work in human resources. I had a co-op term, I worked in human resources, and I think I worked in performance development. Girl, I knew it was not for me. I was like, no. said, no, 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 this cannot be it.
What was different? Like what set you? What basically like set you away from that path? You were like, no, not from me, absolutely not.
I don't know. I guess he was just very like, yeah, it was. How do I even explain this honestly? Like the things they had me doing within the internship and the scope of its job and itself, it was in performance development. So things
Mm-hmm.
like performance improvement plans, then you think about things like career developments. I love thinking and talking about people's careers, but
Mm-hmm.
it got too kind of like structured. They were talking about things that I'm like, I'm not interested in doing
Oh.
this long
Were they
term.
trying to fire people? Is this
No, not that area.
your
No, no, no.
department that fires people? Okay,
No.
no.
Not that
Okay, okay,
area.
okay,
Not that
okay.
area. It was more like skills building, building like what is the trajectory for people's like growth and progression. I'm like, this is all beautiful. This is very, very important, but it just didn't feel like me. So how did I get here? It's been a very interesting journey because I did a research intensive specialization in psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I had a mini life crisis. I was like, I don't know what to do. I did love my co-op work term. I also didn't necessarily love the idea of psychology research because everyone in my class then was like, oh my God, I've never do research. And I guess that stigmatized it for me. So weird, strange thing happened. Someone reached out to me on LinkedIn and she had worked very similar position as that my internship, and we got talking and she talked about, oh, have you considered research? And I said no because like all of my friends, everyone's like, oh, it's so cumbersome, it's so terrible, it's this, blah 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 blah. I'm like, I totally get. And then she's like, that she gets it, but then would you consider it? So I said yes, and she had introduced me to a professor at the University of Waterloo who I actually ended up working with on a couple different projects, which ended up
Lovely.
being very amazing. So I had that stigma about psychology research, which honestly, like when I got into it, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like it is stressful, like it's, I won't lie, it's stressful. The data, the ethics, the everything. It's a process, but it was so rewarding in that one of my first research projects was a directed study looking into how personality and conflict management essentially impacts how people interact in the workplace.
Oh.
And I know it was such an interesting, my paper at the end of the day was really, really, really long because there's of course many different personality types, different conflict management styles. But what I really found coming out of that project was that learning and really understanding the application of psychology in the workplace was very, very interesting and important to me. Like I already had that in my mind, but I'd never really done research to really see if I really enjoyed it, but I did enjoy it. And then after that, she pulled me into one of her research projects that she was doing around also personality, and she had developed, she's an amazing professor and researcher. She had developed this skill around measuring your personality and giving you tips on how to interact in the workplace depending on what your own personality profile was. I just, it was mind blowing. It was exceptional research. I was like, you're like the holy grail of researchers.
Researcher.
Anyway, she was so good. So I really, really enjoyed working with her. And her name is Wendy Adair. And I enjoyed working with
Wendy
her.
Adair, Professor Wendy Adair.
Yes, amazing lady at the University of Waterloo. And so after that, I was like, okay, this doesn't look bad. And then I was like, okay, maybe let me do an honest thesis. So she asked me, and then we talked about it. An honest thesis is an 8 month commitment. So it's a 2 semester commitment. You have to come up with your thesis. You have to also submit it to, you have like a research professor who also like reviews it with you, gives you feedback. So I went through all of that process. It was very daunting, to be very honest, because before I even settled on the topic, my God. So I guess when I finished that project on personality and conflict management styles, I really got interested in how people interact in the workplace. And somehow I really landed on the concept of racial identity, how that interacts in the workplace, and how that impacts other things. So my honors thesis was actually on the impact of racial microaggressions in on trust, on interpersonal trust in the workplace. So when I got into that research, we honestly it was very complex because even the topic of microaggressions in and out of itself, there is both positive and negative research, positive and negative attitudes towards like the concept of microaggressions itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very interesting to delve into the research. Did the research actually, weirdly enough, but also gratefully, it got
Mm-hmm.
published by UCLA after my
Yes.
graduation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's why I said she's a published author. A
so
published author.
yes, sir.
If you guys are sorry to like interrupt you,
Okay.
if you guys are interested in reading her work, you can search for it. Its name is Exploring Preferences for Holistic Relational Conflict Management Among Indigenous Employees. That's the second one,
Yeah,
correct?
that's the second paper that I
Yeah.
worked on with Wendy on. So
Mm-hmm.
the good thing that I enjoyed working with Wendy about was she also had this group of her researchers called Indigenous Workways. And if you know about the Indigenous history in Canada and all of the struggles that they faced, yeah, it's very interesting history if you don't know about it. But I also got into that space and helped her with some of the research. I also had some great ideas that unfortunately we didn't get a chance to complete, but that paper that you just spoke about was
Mm-hmm.
we've been working on it for years. So we had sat down with indigenous employees at the University of Waterloo in kind of like a sharing circle, which is kind of like an indigenous practice,
Mm-hmm.
and we did like a smudge, we opened with like a ritual, and then we kind of talked through relational conflicts management and how that looks like from how conflict management in general looks like from an indigenous perspective. And it got published this year, which by the Canadian Journal of Behavioral Science. So full circle moments, it felt really good to kind of see that happen. But
Mm-hmm.
kind of backing back up to how I got here as a job. So
Mm-hmm.
after I graduated, this was before the research publication and everything. I just wanted to get a job out of school, and
Like many of
somehow,
us.
girl, like many of us, I got into a role of like talent and inclusion coordinator at a an architecture firm.
Okay.
And it was still the same kind of like performance development that I'd done during my internship. But I guess what was different was that DEI or DEI, whatever you want to call it, diversity, equity, and inclusion, fell under my team. And my manager at the time, I think, was manager of global DEI, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
She had some title around that, and I there was an amazing specialist on our team, and when I listened to her talk, I was like, whoa, sis. Like, I absolutely loved the way she spoke about things, the way she educated people. It was honestly, it was beautiful to see. And so, of course, that piqued my interest a lot more. I did a lot more work on it with her, wrote a lot of their communications, and that's kind of how I started dipping my toes into this world. And following that, I now moved on to this role in a different company where I essentially helped them build the entire program, the education, and realize their strategic action plan.
Oh, you basically like ended up doing the exact same role that like you saw that lady doing at a different company. That's entirely so cool. So like your experience so far compared to like personal development and DEI, you find I'm going to guess that you find DEI a lot more fulfilling.
Yes, yes, I find it so fulfilling because I graduated with a minor in human resources, right? And my intention was like, oh, probably work in HR. But like every single area of HR that I've heard about, I didn't like. This is not to say there's
Fair enough.
anything bad. It just wasn't for me personally. I just didn't
Mm,
find it as fulfilling
mm.
as I find what I'm doing now. Because right now I'm really able to use kind of like things I'm passionate and knowledgeable about to actually like it's like for me it feels like I'm really impacting change because I've come out of situations where people are like, oh my god, I wish I learned that like 20 years ago and now I'm so old. I'm like, there's learning never stops, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
you're always going to learn. So like I find
Regardless of your
this
age.
regardless till the last day, literally you can always learn something new. So
Absolutely.
I just find it so rewarding in that you know what you're doing because I'm a black woman. I've had not so many great experiences. I moved to Canada when I was 16.
Detail.
Yeah. So it's like a personal, it's very personal for me, like very, very personal for me, because for me my biggest thing is to like it's really just all about treating the next person with respect and dignity. And if I don't want to be treated a certain way, like why would I treat the next person a certain way? And a
Very
lot
good
of
question.
right? And a lot of times we find or we tend to think that like what we're doing isn't harming the next person. But when you really take a look at research where a name that isn't sound white sounding doesn't get as much interviews as a white sounding name, or like when you don't implement things like blind resume techniques and like people start to see names, biases start to form, just an entire
Mm-hmm.
brain process behind this, right? So I really like this, both the mix of the science behind it and also that change in behavior, that getting people to understand why this is a very important area. I find that so rewarding, and I really like adult education. Apparently,
Yeah.
it has its challenges, but
Oh, of course. Like, cause okay, so like, there's this saying that adults are like a lot more set in their ways. You will come to find out that it's true, especially in education. So,
I will tell you that for free.
I imagine that that's how it's been. Now you mentioned that like at least in your cohorts, like a lot of students usually shy away from research. And let me tell you, it's not only in the field of psychology and human resources, it's in engineering, it's in the sciences, it's in technology. Like, as soon as people hear research based, they're like, absolutely not, absolutely not. I'm not doing that.
Yes.
And the thing is that, unfortunately or fortunately, like their concerns hold some water,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Research is can be very tedious, especially if like you're not 100% interested in what it is you're doing.
Yes.
So would you say that your experience like researching has been a pro or a con to like your day-to-day job right now, like to your current role, those research muscles you were able to flex and build over the years, has it been impactful in any way to what you're doing right now?
Yes, honestly, 100%. And I say yes because one of the honestly one of the biggest reasons why I got hired in my current role is the ability to do research.
Oh.
And yeah, it was one of the big things for them during my interview. It's like they were just starting out their DE&I journey and they needed someone who is like able to research what are the best practices, what are the principles, what is everything you essentially need as an organization to be like to start building up your maturity in DE&I.
I
So
see.
it was a big factor into why I was hired. And honestly, in my day-to-day job, it really is helpful because even just understanding the premise of how research papers are written, the idea, the intention behind them, understanding how skills that they use, especially for psychology research,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what those skills include, how they're developed is very, very important because a lot of times what I also deal with in my role is like the business case. So people are like, oh, why should I care? Why, oh, this doesn't matter. I'm not racist. I'm like, it's not just
Yeah,
about
like
that.
I've been doing it this way forever. Like,
Yeah.
why does it matter now?
Exactly. And because I've had that firsthand research experience, listen, I've told them, see, I have done research myself, and this is exactly what I found in my own research. And in as much as like I can come here and tell you what someone else has done, I've also done this, and this is exactly what I found in my own space and in that particular area, especially around microaggressions, which is one of those topics that people are like, oh my God, microaggressions, whatever. But and then like when I also really think about my day to day, the data analysis, because when you really think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's the diversity part of it, right? The representation pieces, being able to
Mm-hmm.
understand the composition of your workforce, what the data is telling you, being able to try to start making data driven decisions. So it's been really, really helpful for me personally because it just shows a certain level of expertise in the field. It also really
Mm-hmm.
helps me with the research that I have to do because before I make any suggestions in my workplace, before I put together any training material, I've done the research. Like I've read what what's the thought leadership on this particular thing before I actually do it. So when you really understand the flow of like research papers, how data analysis and things like that are done, you're able to kind of like pick and choose. Do I want to use this? Is this a metric that's going to be useful for my organization? Is it not? And so on. So honestly, it's gotten me to where I am today,
So
and I cannot
fair,
complain.
fair, fair enough. My next concern then would be like the people, or like, let's say, individuals, career switchers who haven't really, had this like like a similar experience researching. Do you think they will find it a lot more difficult? Like, no?
No.
Why
I
do you say so?
think so. I guess the reason why I say so is because in the area of DE&I, it really has a lot to do with how much there's an element of it. It's like how much can you influence a person's behavior in the sense that like can you essentially educate them on why say something their XYZ is not necessarily right or wrong, but why something might be problematic way of thinking, or why something might kind of like be perceived differently by a different person. So, for example, I might think that I'm saying something respectful, but the next person can perceive it negatively, right? And it's all based on individual perspective or perception. So, it's really being able to have the confidence to have those very difficult conversations is one of the biggest pieces in this role. Research is very, very important, of course, because you really need to be able to understand what's like the thought leadership on this entire field is. But even if you haven't had firsthand experience, like firsthand research experience has definitely helped me because I've been in rooms where I'm like, this is what I found. You can't tell me anything because
Yeah.
this is my research paper published.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, I feel like there's other ways that you can showcase your influence with the way that you speak, with the way you also draw on other people's research that people have already done. So a couple of like very popular organizations that we always cite is like McKinsey and Company, Deloitte, Glassdoor, and so on. So just throw the big names at them. Throw the big names.
It's like, oh, you don't want to listen to me. Maybe you listen to Harvard.
Yeah,
Maybe you
literally.
listen to Stanford.
No, literally, honestly. Because a lot of times, like, people are like, oh, what is the business case? And then I love when people try to refute psychology research. I just find it so funny because I'm like, this is just human behavior. So you're basically exhibiting what we think you're going to do. So you're like, anyway,
Like,
it's
unfortunately for you, you're part of the statistics.
literally you're part of the problem. because because like it's like this is years and years and years and years of research, right? That people just wake up one morning and you're like, oh, that's BS, blah blah blah. It's rubbish. Anyway, it's just interesting. But anyway, sorry, off topic.
No, 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 you're all good. Please, this is a yaparistic podcast. This is
Literally,
where you come to yap about things you're very much interested in.
oh goodness. But
So
honestly,
yes, please go.
anyone who's interested in this field, it's I wouldn't say it's necessarily easy, but there's training courses that you can take, right? There's so many of them that exist on LinkedIn. Then I've done one with AI HR. I can't remember something to innovates something innovates HR. Can't remember what the A means.
Academy to Innovate HR.
Yes, AI
AH,
HR.
AIHR, yeah.
Yes, so I've done their specialist in the ENI certification, and honestly, it's I wouldn't really say. I guess I have a one-sided view of it because for me, my research and everything just flows really well. But from an outside perspective of someone who's interested in this, like I would naturally expect them to be interested in making change, have a personal, potentially have a personal lived experience, or know someone that's had a personal experience, either like a close family member and things like that. And you can always draw on those to really inform your perspective and your passion for the work. And I feel like a lot of the work is really, really like you have to be passion driven because
Yes, and like I would like to add that even like within that state of being passion driven, you also need to actually be willing to do the work. You have to
yes,
be willing to sit down, read the articles, read the papers, be willing to step out of your comfort zone of, like, the way it's in my head, there's a step from awareness to passion to getting on the field, like
Yeah.
getting your hands dirty. So you need to, I guess, be passionate enough to move from just the idea in your head to actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So, we've spoken a great deal about your
I
job.
know.
I would, I would like you to give me like a very quick day to day. Let me explain better. A very quick typical day. So let me say in the morning, you wake up, bath, you're at your desk, or you've gone out to like some remote workplace because she works fully remotely. You I don't know, take your first 8 a.m. meeting, and like maybe next thing you do, you're educating. So just give us a rundown of your normal 9 to 5, like the activities within a 9 to 5. A typical day where like there's nothing special happening.
Okay, nothing special happening.
Nothing special happening, just a typical day.
Okay. Uh, when there's nothing special happening, like I don't have any like learning sessions or any big things happening, I guess typical day. I mean, I'd wake up, I'm work 9 to 5, I work remotely, and that's a good question. Also depends on how many meetings I have that day. But because of the area that I work in, I work with a strategic action plan. I also have like requests that come in terms like people are like, oh, can you look into this? Or I noticed this. Can you maybe do something about it? Or there's usually a process. There's always something that I need to look into and to make more inclusive, which is really great. It's amazing. It keeps me employed. So I would typically kind of go through my task tracker, my task list. None of my activities I can almost never get them done in one day because there's multiple stakeholders usually, which is also something that's very like that I also experience in my role. I always have multiple stakeholders. So a typical day, I would kind of take a look at my task tracker and kind of figure out what are my top two things for that day. And if, say, I'm preparing for an upcoming session or upcoming something, it could be anything around accessibility or diversity and inclusion, I really just do research. So let me give you an example of what today looks like.
Please.
So today was really very kind of like study focused for me because I am planning an event for my organization. So, and of course, with this is a lot of like initiatives and things that, I guess, let's call them initiatives and programs. So you have
Okay.
to figure out how to make it engaging, impactful, to pass along the message you wanted to pass along. So today was a very study heavy session for me. So just reading different people's thought leadership on different things. So
Okay.
particularly one of the things that I was really looking into today and writing about was the difference between neurodiversity and neurodivergence.
Okay.
So reading as I got into research articles, and then I was also coming up with an engagement activity for one of the events that I'm planning. So if you've never heard of it, but I guess one of the things I was really looking into today was the concept of an inclusion nudge and how I
Mm-hmm.
can repurpose that for my organization. So today was very reading heavy. So it's a very read like you have to be able to read. You have to be prepared.
Actually, like,
To
let me
be
just like
prepared.
quickly segue, like my final question,
Yeah.
regarding your own like day-to-day job, like your day job. Could you share with us like your strategy to read? Because I've done some research before, and my goodness, is a lot. So usually I okay, when I've had to do a lot of like research reading, what I've stuck to is, let's say I read the title, then I first of all read maybe the abstract. As soon as I'm done with the abstract, I go to maybe the actual like performance of the experiment.
Yeah.
After the experiment, I read the results. After the results, then whatever other time I have, that's when I'll go and read the literature review, the other body of the work. So that's what works for me. So what has worked for you? Because if your day to day is a lot of studying, whoever is interested in this
Studying.
job needs a strategy on how to make sure they are balancing self education, educating the actual like workforce, and also making sure they're doing their job. Like their job of strategizing as well. And you're not just drowning in all the research.
So I like all of the example, like your entire process is kind of, I'd say, very similar to the process that I use as well. I think, well, for me, one of the first things I also look at when I look at an article or I'm interested in reading is the amount of times it's been cited. I know I don't always look at it, but the more times it's been cited, the more times people have really kind of like referenced that research, and it's that
And
makes it a little bit more
dissected it
credible.
here.
Exactly. So because I'm not reading for academic research where I care about all of the little pieces, whether it's cited or not, I'm just looking for thought leadership. I try to focus most on those. And I read in bits, honestly. I I would, depending on what I'm looking for. So, for example, today when I was reading on like neurodiversity and neurodivergence, I actually really read the entire first part of the article because it if it's a topic that is new to you, it helps you to build subject matter expertise on it because you start to understand how people are framing it, how people are talking. Because in that first part of the article is where they get into all of the concepts, the definitions, they get into other people's thought leadership on that topic. So if it's something that I'm like, oh, this is very new to me, I would read that entire session even before I go into what the experiment was about because I take notes. I'm a big note taker. I have my iPad is and my Apple Pencil is my best friend every single time. Screenshots, it's writing, it's everything, downloading as much as I can. Then if it's something where like I really want to know what the result of the experiment is, I would skim that top part, go to what their experimental process was, and then read that conclusion because the conclusion also really includes like a lot of like action items for organizations, other researchers, and so on. So for me, if I don't care about the experiments, it's the first few pages, the last few pages. And if I care about the
Absolutely fair enough.
experiment,
Absolutely fair enough. Mother fair because
because
like
sometimes it gets a lot.
and like it's like if, even when you're reading, there's a part of you that wants to respect all of the energy, all of the time that maybe the researchers put into it. But when you have like 50 papers to read and all of them spanning minimum 10 pages, 15
Girl.
pages, 20, 200, it's so I can only imagine. Now to
So
move more into like industry questions. If there's one thing about your industry in general, when I say your industry, I mean both HR, both like DI. Oh, actually, okay, no, I'm on track. So, what is the one thing that people don't know about that you would like to change, basically? Like, is there a particular school of thought that you question seriously, or is there like a particular process that you don't think should even be in existence or should be totally abolished, or you know, just something within that field that you have your eye on?
so this is a very, very interesting question because one of the it's I wouldn't say it should be abolished. I think it needs to be destigmatized in a way. So at first when people think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, they first think about affirmative action. And they're interconnected, but they're not the same thing. So affirmative action is kind of like, let me put this. So you know the concept of I don't know. I don't want to misspeak. There's a specific like definition, and I haven't done research on affirmative action in a minute, so it's not very top of mind. But it's
That's
kind of
okay.
like setting aside specific spots. Say, for an example, I own an organization and I'm like, okay, I really want to bring more Black people into this workplace. So I'm going to reserve specific jobs for, say, Black people only, and I'm only going to hire Black candidates for that job. Or I know a couple of schools also do this where they also, it's almost kind of like called diversity quotas. And I have a love hate relationship with diversity quotas. And the reason why is that in the general public, it gets misconstrued as unfairness.
Mm,
The reason why a lot of these affirmative action programs and diversity quotas exist is to help to balance the underrepresentation in many different industries, right? Then, when we really talk about the other aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, one of the biggest pieces is education, right? So, educating people on essentially how to treat people better in different ways, different cultures, different abilities, and so on. But people tend to only focus on, oh, they're taking away this job and giving it to these specific people. Or is it because I'm not Black? Or is it because, like, do you get what I mean? Then they start
yeah.
to get into those arguments where it really is mind boggling for me because those are two, they're not different, but they also are different in terms of
Yeah.
like we shouldn't lose the idea that the part of the big essence behind DEI is that inclusion of the next person, respect. And when while we have diversity quotas and some people have diversity quotas, not all organizations do, but there is affirmative action because there is has been historical like injustice done to people, which has then influenced how they've navigated throughout their entire life from generations and generations. Because if you really think
Exactly.
about it, from an indigenous perspective, particularly, the last indigenous residential school was closed only in 1997. That wasn't that long ago. It's
That's
less
so.
than exactly my point.
That was yesterday. What?
Exactly my points. I was less than 30 years ago, right? Because, like, a lot of people tend to think that this is ancient history. Oh, we don't need to right any wrongs. But when you really think about the systems of oppression that have essentially diminished certain groups at the expense of other groups rising up, it only is fair and makes sense for us to have certain programs that help to support those groups like mentorship programs, apprenticeship programs. But when people start to see those like specific mentorship programs, apprenticeship programs, or job work or work programs that support those individuals, it then starts to be like, oh, you're taking away our jobs and giving it to these people because they're Black or because they're a minority, which I hate that word. But
What it seems to me like is like just leveling the playing field. And
100%.
how I rationalize it in my head is like you wouldn't feel disenfranchised or annoyed or like something has been stolen from you when you see a homeless person being given free shelter. That's how I tend to like rationalize it.
Yep.
Like, so
And
why are you bursting at the seams? Because people who have generationally been at a disadvantage, an unfair disadvantage to you, are now being given a somewhat unfair advantage.
yeah.
And I would say somewhat unfair because it's not taken away from the sports that you can vie for. So
It's usually a completely different space. And the thing
it's
too that
so
sometimes
interesting.
people tend to forget, the one thing people tend to forget is that you aren't hiring these people because they're on just because you're Black or because they're woman or because of whatever, or because they're indigenous or whatever. They also qualify to be there. But because there's just this myth that everything operates based on merits, which that's a whole girl. We could have a whole completely different conversation about that because it
It's not true.
is not
That's
true.
just look to the entertainment industry and you will know for a fact that it is not
It
true.
is not
The
true.
nepotism is glaring, even in the medical field. Like, what are we talking about?
Everywhere.
Even in Ivy League schools, I think I Ivy League schools often like aside from affirmative action and all that, there's this thing they have about like legacy students, where like if
Yes.
like a
Yes.
relative has attended the school before, like you get brownie points during the application. So why
Does
are
it make
people
you more
not screaming
qualified?
at the top of their lungs against that? So it's a very check yourselves, people. Check your
Yes.
biases. Check your
Literally.
biases. It is glaring at you. Next question, Jerry. So, the current political climate, I would say currently it discourages people to seek out fields generally in DEI. Let's not
Yes.
even talk about the DEI field, which is like human resources within under like the cover of diversity, equity, inclusion. So do you think that in this current political climate, it's your role is needed more, or do you think it is dying out?
Do I think it's needed more? 100%. Absolutely. Because I literally said this to someone today. I think we're losing the plot. DEI is not the cause of plane crashes. It's not the cause of whatever people might want to say. And a big part of why it's having so much stigma is around that diversity quota, the affirmative action thing that I talked about.
Absolutely.
And it's needed now more than ever because we tend to forget as human beings that the events that happened in history are not that long ago. It's not like what, a couple, maximum a
It's
couple
not even
years.
up to 100 years.
It's not that long ago, and naturally, like research and everything has proven this. I mean, even human beings, as yourself, if you really examine yourself, you would notice this. You naturally gravitate towards things and people who are like you, who confirm how you act, how you behave, what you hold as values, and everything else that kind of isn't within that bucket is almost seen as oh, ew, outside, and it's an outside thing. It's like, oh, well, that is weird, or I'm never going to speak to that person. So we tend to forget that it's so easy for us to go back into doing and thinking that way. And the reason why DI exists is to create that education piece. But what I've really found in politics, even in media, and a lot of like the research, not I guess a lot of the articles that I've been reading, people are starting to really focus a lot more on like the political aspect of it versus the education aspect of it. It's like I'm not seeing as much where people are really getting into the reason why we need to be more empaths, for an example, why we need to think about things like, because when we really think about inclusion, there's a spectrum. Because and yeah, there's so much thought in, like there's so much knowledge around the DEI field, but I'm not really seeing a lot of new things where there is a lot of like good education coming out, because of course we need to refute the politics, we need to do pushback and everything. But I also think we should not lose the plots that DEI is really about educating the next person, educating everybody that the next person isn't your enemy. The next person isn't less than you, regardless of what height,
Absolutely.
skin color, however you feel like they might look that is different from you. And if we start to focus too much on the political pieces of it, we might lose the fundamental parts of why these things exist.
Exists already.
And it's so important now more than ever, because now there's so much like the field is facing a lot of backlash, and we're seeing offices and things being shut down, but it really shouldn't be like
It
it's.
really shouldn't.
And what I always tell everyone is like, oh, at least a couple of people that I meet is like, DI wouldn't exist if we were just respectful, if we didn't think the next person was like in some way less than us because of certain diversity factors. This office wouldn't exist if we just treated each other with respect, if we just like went about our day and treated the next person with integrity, and we were respectful, we were
And
accountability
basic
accountable
human
to our
decency.
actions. This would not exist. But it exists because we're in an imperfect world, and the world is never going to be perfect. So we need to keep reminding ourselves of why it exists every single day. But honestly, like trying times for real.
Trying times, honestly. So, Emma, first of all, thank you so much
This is a lot.
for, even agreeing to this because all of these questions, all of these topics are things that I'm genuinely curious about, and like I'm very grateful, like that like you took time out of your day to sit down with me and actually explain it properly to me. My final question to you would be, what what is a typical career progression for someone just starting out, maybe not yet in your role, maybe not yet at your level, and still coming back to like the current like climate specifically, like for for like your field. Do you think there'll be job opportunities, and what will those job opportunities look like, and what will career growth look like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say there's still going to be job opportunities because naturally, unfortunately, as human beings, we're not always going to be the greatest to each other.
Absolutely.
We're not also always going to. I feel like every organization at least needs one person that thinks of things from that inclusion lens. Personally, I think it's a must have
Most.
because yeah, honestly, like there's certain things I like. Of course, if I'm a HR professional, my expertise is recruitment. I may not always necessarily be thinking about this, but as someone who is like your this is your subject matter expertise, you're constantly thinking about these things, right? And you're constantly looking for places where it doesn't exist, it's not enough, or we could be doing more. But anyway, that being said, I don't think it's a field that's going to go anywhere at all. I think it's honestly, I think it's here to stay. And a
It should
typical,
be.
it girl should be. Um, a typical progression can look like you can first start at like a coordinator level, go up to like a specialist, a manager level, a director level. And I know for global companies, there's usually like a global head of like DEI, or there's usually like a DEI strategic partner and things like that for big, really big companies. But big, I know like a lot of big companies have not shied away from DEI, but then there's also the government pieces of it, right? From
Absolutely.
a government perspective, at least within Canada, there is legislation around things like the Employment Equity Act, the Accessible Canada Act, and then within Ontario, there's the AODA. There's a couple of legislations around creating an equitable society. We have one of the big projects that we are working on at my organization is pay equity. So all of these things kind of like fit into the umbrella of DEI, and they aren't going anywhere. At least I can speak for Canada in general, especially if you're within the government field, it's not going anywhere because there's legislations and government owned companies are required to comply to that legislation, right? And you report on it every single year and your progress. But even in places where there's no like legislative like compliance pieces of it, some companies see it as the right thing to do. Some companies believe that it's a good business case. When you think about areas like healthcare too, for an example, I honestly think that people of all walks of life need an advocate because within even just the healthcare industry, there's a lot of there's a lot of things. I don't want to get into it, but there's a lot of
It's
things.
a lot of bias, a lot of horror stories I've heard as well.
Yeah.
It is not looking peachy, and I would say especially in the medical field and just anything that has to deal with human mortality, we need DI the most.
I agree with you. So I think it's really here to stay. Then we think about areas that are like STEM industries, for an example, places that are were naturally male dominated, but then women are really entering into the workforce, and we're seeing younger women, we're seeing people from many different generations in the workplace. Of course, naturally, there's going to be
Button
exactly.
heads.
Exactly. So as we're continuing to see that shift in STEM industries as well, it's something that's also going to be very, very, very necessary because another area under this too could also be the area of sexual harassment and discrimination in the workplace. I hate to say it, but it's real, it's legit, it happens. So that's also
Unfortunately.
unfortunately, like it's so sad, which is what makes offices like this very, very important because in some organizations, you also talk about like harassment and violence cases. You also talk about sexual harassment, discrimination cases, and things like that. And you go through that resolution process because you also, I believe everyone wants their workplace to feel safe. Can't think of anyone who doesn't. And there's also the area of psychological health and safety that people could also venture into because, in a way, creating a psychological safe working environments also does help create like inclusion because when we really think about what psychological safety is, it's really being able to create an open space for people to share. Part of it is sharing their thoughts without fear or judgments, and there's a piece of like making sure that your organization people feel like it's a safe space both mentally and not just physically. Focus on physical a lot, but there's also the mental aspect, and part of psychological health and safety is how do we give feedback safely, respectfully, and things like that. So
Mhm.
there's so many different areas that you can venture into. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a diversity, equity, and inclusion title, but there's equity offices, there is harassment and violence offices, there is psychological health and safety offices, mental health and wellness offices, and in one way or the other, all these things actually do fit into creating an inclusive workspace. There's also the piece of like the social governance for organizations that have environmental, social, and social governance, so ESG and sustainability within their radar. So for
Mhm.
companies that have sustainability within their radar and they use that ESG principles, the S in ESG is the social piece of it. And part of that is making sure that you're considering your people. You think about the climate of Canada, there's reconciliation that needs to happen with Indigenous people and Indigenous. So
Absolutely.
there's that piece of it. There's so many areas within this industry that you can venture into that maybe it's not necessarily as talked about, but there's so much that you can do with this work. Like so much, honestly. So
Thank you. Thank you so much again. And like for everyone interested in venturing into this field, I would like at least to express to you that your work is important. The thing you like the research you're doing, the education you're doing, the strategizing, the facilitating, it is all very important with the especially with like the advent of the internet. The world is becoming more and more just like a global village. Like we're a melting pot. There is no singular country you go to, there is no singular workplace you go to that is just 100% one race. Even if it's 100% one race, it's not 100% one culture. So,
exactly.
like, your work will always be extremely important. So, please take up the mantle, go into these spaces, and absolutely dominate and absolutely make a change. Like I mentioned before, Emma here is a creative in her own right. She's a content creator. So now I would like to invite her to plug all of her content pages. Where can we find you, Emma? Where can we follow you? Can we follow you on LinkedIn? Where can we check out your work?
Okay, so on LinkedIn is of course my professional profile. You can see I guess I do need to start posting a little bit more. I do plan to post a lot more like thought leadership on DEI on LinkedIn, but it's Emanuela Oku on LinkedIn, on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and I think everything else. It's O underscore Ella. So OH
That's
underscore
OOH. Mm-hmm. Go on.
OH underscore ELLAH. Yeah, and yeah, just a little personal vlog. And yeah,
A very fun personal blog. Go follow.
yes, inviting you to love yourself.
And that's the end of the episode for this week. Thank you so much for staying it till the end. And I hope Emma and I have been able to convince and not confuse you to get into this career field, okay? Bye, ladies and gentlemen, of course, and others. Bye.